As we begin 5 Live today, viewer, I want to tell you that the Anantnag terror operation is still very much on. India's brave personnel from the police and the Indian Army are still out there in the Kokarnag area after having suffered a terrible, terrible loss that we've been reporting to you all through the day today and yesterday. I'm Shiv. We're going to pay tribute and you're going to meet someone who has felt this loss. Thanks for being with us. These are the headlines. India salutes its braves, Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish Dhonchak, and Deputy Superintendent of Police Humayun Muzammil Bhatt, killed in action in an anti-terror operation in Anantnag. Pakistan's Lashkar front, the resistance force, has taken responsibility. Vowing to avenge our brave hearts, forces have encircled 2 Lashkar terrorists at the encounter site, including LET Commander Uzair Khan. Joint security ops hiding at the encounter site underway. Wide outrage against Pakistani terror. Social media up in arms as clamour to stop cricket with Pakistan increases. No cricket, terror tango, say angry Indians in their millions. Prime Minister Modi hits out at opposition over Sanatan Dharm slander, says India bloc is anti-Hindu, asks Sanatanis to rise up against opposition attack.
हर सनातनी को, इस देश को प्यार करने वाले को, इस देश की मिट्टी को प्यार करने वाले को, इस देश के कोटि-कोटि जनों को प्यार करने वालों को, हर किसी को सतर्क रहने की जरूरत है.
Ahead of Mission 2024, Janasena Chief Pawan Kalyan joins hands with Chandrababu Naidu's TDP to fight the election. Says Jagan Reddy's YSRCP government must fall. Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish Dhonchak, and Deputy Superintendent of Police Humayun Bhatt. By now, if you've been watching television or using social media, you're familiar with their faces. Young men in their prime, the best years of their lives ahead of them. Gone in a second. Thanks to the prying eyes of us in the media, you get but a glimpse of the families they leave behind. From Srinagar to Chandigarh to Panipat, the images are painfully familiar. Stoic fathers fighting to keep their composure, weeping mothers so stricken with grief they are barely conscious, wives sent into the kind of shock that renders you feelingless and blank, and children too small to even understand why everyone around them is suddenly so serious. In a few months, I complete 20 years as a defense reporter, viewer. In these 2 decades, I've had the privilege of spending far more time with the families of fallen army personnel than TV cameras now allow. I've seen their grief, and I've also seen how, when the cameras move off to the next big story, these families silently melt back into their lives. There's no drama, no slogans, all of it evaporates and they are left alone with their grief. We citizens love using phrases like the nation will never forget. But you know I'm not lying when I say that it's unlikely that any of us, you or me, will actively remember Manpreet, Ashish and Humayun 1 week from now. Their faces will be replaced with someone else's. The only people who will continue to hold on to those memories are the families and the army unit and the police unit to which they belonged. One of the reasons I decided to write books about military heroes and their families is because it has always occurred to me just how unfair it is that they enter our lives for a few brief, painful hours or days and then they virtually disappear altogether. How is it that personnel like Manpreet, like Humayun, like Ashish, who literally without cliche fight to the death so we and people like us may live a life of freedom, are allowed to pass into the black hole of anonymity and are forgotten. The families of uniformed personnel, especially those serving in troubled areas like Jammu and Kashmir, are made of a material that is difficult to understand and difficult to fathom. They go about their lives in an uninterrupted state of worry, the kind of worry that wears them down so much that it becomes the new normal. They wake up each day hoping it is as uneventful as the last. They shun drama and overt expressions of emotion. Just look at them in these pictures. The most ordinary things can bring on waves of anxiety, like the sound of a phone ringing. Some mothers sit in front of pictures of their gods whenever their sons call to inform them that they're leaving for an operation. They don't exhale until they get a second call confirming that their child is safe. If the call is from someone else, all the blood drains from them. Sometimes they don't even pick up the call. Each night they say a prayer, thanking the heavens for another day passed without event. And when they have to wake up and do it all over again, they do it exactly the same way. As we bid farewell to Manpreet, Ashish and Humayun, let's remember their families. Nobody will fault us, you or me, for forgetting them a week from now. But let us never forget what they did, what they stood for, and the kinds of people who must remain sleepless so they can defend the country without distraction. Thank you for listening. Like I just told you, viewer, the Anantnag terror operation is still very much on. Fighting terrorists, the 3 officers I just named have lost their lives in a major ongoing firefight in the area called Kokarnag in Anantnag district. This is the same army unit that eliminated terrorist Burhan Wani a few years ago. An Indian Army colonel, a major, and a police deputy superintendent have been killed in action. Here's the full story.
Former JNK DIG Ghulam Hassan Bhatt is composed and dignified in grief as he pays tribute to his son, Deputy Superintendent Humayun Bhatt. The DSP's death in the encounter with terrorists in Anantnag has left the valley in shock. A sea of mourners turned up on Thursday to pay their respects to Bhatt, whose mortal remains, draped in a tricolour, arrived at his village in Badgaon. Awaiting him was his wife, who stood with their 2-month-old daughter in her hands. The 29-year-old Jammu and Kashmir police officer had got married just last year. Mohali is in mourning. Colonel Manpreet Singh was commanding the 19 Rashtriya Rifles Battalion in the counter-insurgency operation when he was killed in action. Colonel Singh, who was recently honoured with a gallantry award, had been serving the army for the last 17 years. He is survived by his wife Jagmeet Grewal and 2 children, 6-year-old son Kabir and 2-year-old daughter Bani Kaur.
This entire family which is engulfed in grief, and this grief is not just limited to this family but this village, the entire state and perhaps the entire country. You can see the sort of emotions. There's not a single eye which is dry. Obviously, this is a huge setback for the family.
Last time राखी पे बात हुई थी, सुबह बात हुई थी. Next month उन्होंने आने की बात कही थी. अपने बेटे के बर्थडे पे उन्होंने आना था शायद. और 8-9 months रह गए थे इस पूरे उसमें यूनिट में 19 RR में. इसके बाद शायद उन्होंने अपनी पेरेंट यूनिट में चले जाना था. मेरे मदर जो है स्पेशली वो गिन गिन के दिन देखते थे कि चलो ये भी निकल गया मंथ, ये भी निकल गया मंथ, कि चलो 7-8 महीने रह गए, निकल जाएंगे.
Major Ashish Dhochak's mother says she has vowed not to shed tears. Her son died a hero fighting terrorists.
मेरा बेटा सारे देश का बेटा था, सारे देश का चैता था मेरा बेटा, सबका प्यारा था मेरा बेटा. मैं ना रोऊं, मैं ना रोऊं, मैंने अपना बेटा पाल कर देश ताई दे दिया था। मन तो पाल कर अपना बेटा देश ताई सौंप दिया था।
Major Dochak has left behind his wife Jyoti and 3-year-old daughter Vamika.
अगर आतंकवाद हमारे 2 बच्चों को शहीद करके जाता है तो हम उसके 4 करते हैं, 5 करते हैं, उससे कोई फायदा नहीं मिलने वाला। इसका बिल्कुल सफाया होना चाहिए।
The Resistance Front, a shadow group of the Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, has claimed responsibility for the Anantnag terror attack. The forces have vowed to avenge the killing of the brave hearts. India salutes the sacrifice of the heroes. With Kamaljeet Sandhu and Manpreet Sehgal in Mohali and Ashraf Wani from Srinagar, Bureau Report, India Today.
On 5 Live today, I decided I didn't only want to tell you the stories of Colonel Manpreet, Humayun and Major Ashish, but also about what it is like to be a mother or a wife, a family member of someone who has fallen in battle. Joining me live, I have the great privilege of having with us on our show today, Meghna Girish. She is the mother of late Major Akshay Girish, a hero of the Indian Army who fell fighting Pakistani terrorists in Nagrota in November 2016. Meghna ma'am, thank you very much for being with me on this show. An entire nation remembers dear Akshay, and we are all with you, you know that. And the reason I called you today onto our show, along with these pictures of Akshay as well and you in happier times, is that I wanted to put the spotlight on families. You said something very, very poignant yesterday in response to one of my tweets where you said, it's a pain that never goes away. I want you to explain that for us. You're someone who lives every day with what you lost in the form of Major Akshay Girish, a brave young Indian Army officer who was fighting terrorists at the time of his last operation. Meghna ma'am.
Thank you for having me, Shiv, and my, greatest salutes to 3 more Akshayas whom we've just lost, Colonel Manpreet, Major Ashish, and DSP Humayun. It all comes back, the pain, the loss, the feeling of longing. It all comes back when you keep seeing this happen again and again. As a mother, I would never want anybody to go through this kind of pain that we have. People tell me I'm strong. You've met me. I am strong. But days like this, like last night, was awful again. And the whole day you sort of weighed down. So I really think that, when is this going to end? I would never want any other family to go through what families like us have been going through.
Meghna ma'am, the reason I also called you here on my show today is because I want common citizens to understand what it's like to be the mother of an army man or a woman in the army. The grief that you have gone through, and my deepest apologies for asking you these questions, ma'am. But I know for a fact not only how strong you are, but I also know that you see the worth of your words right now in the people who are listening. So I do want to ask you, with the greatest of humility and respect, as a mother of an army soldier, an army officer, what was every day like when he was out there? The worry, the anxiety, is there ever any rest? These families, especially when they're in troubled areas like Nagrota, where Akshay was, or in Kokarnag, where Manpreet, Humayun and Ashish were, is there ever a moment of just rest and peace?
When Akshay was in Kupwara and Tangdhar earlier, and again when he was in high altitude along the LC with China, I was more worried at that time. But Nagrota seemed like a good posting, generally a peaceful. But you never know when terror hits you. So he came through Nagaland and Manipur, he came through Kupwara, there were incidents, then also an infiltration bid which he was part of foiling. But you never know when, terror can hit you, because these people are suicidal, and they
Yes.
just, their only aim is to kill and to take their own lives. And it's just not normal. It's not humane or human at all. So Nagrota came as a shock. In fact, we never expected that in a peace station something like this could happen. But yes, someone who's serving in the Rashtriya Rifles, like for example, Colonel Manpreet and his entire team, and there are so many RRs. We've been in touch, very close touch with many RR battalions, and we've been meeting families of
Yes.
soldiers who've lost their lives, ex-servicemen, and we've very closely connected. And each of them is like an Akshay to me. Like, I mean, I know many of the COs and their juniors as well. So when they're serving in the Rashtriya Rifles, every day is a risk.
Yes.
Every day, every hour. You never know when there is going to be a call and when they will have to go out there, and and what's going to happen. So for the families, I'm sure they would be very worried. You have young brides, you have parents, you have siblings, and
Yes.
everybody is counting those days. When will this tenure finish, and when will they come back, safe? So I would say that definitely the families are all the time hoping and that nothing will happen. But at the same time, you never want to think of the worst, like, right? You always think that no, everything will be fine. And serving your country, defending your country is an honor. It's not for everybody to be able to do that, and to do that day in and day out, so that everybody else can stay free. I think it comes along with that, the pride and the responsibilities is also carried by the family, to
Yes.
keep their soldiers who are there all the time. We never talk about fears or worries with our soldiers who are out there. We only talk like normal family members. We don't want to stress them out. They have enough on their plate in terms of operations.
There is, there is this aspect of the emotions that, people like you feel, and, obviously the parents and the spouses of those who've fallen in Anantnag will feel, which is this very unique mix, Meghna ma'am, of both terrible grief but also extreme pride. Because, in the army there is this saying, he made the supreme sacrifice in the finest traditions of the army. In my view, as a cynical journalist, I find that these phraseologies are for our own benefit, for those who are left behind, to alleviate our own sense of guilt that we have to send young men, into harm's way to defend the country. That's the bitter reality of it. But I want to ask you about that, the act of moving on. There is no moving on, is there? Despite so much pride, there is so much grief, there is no moving on.
Shiv, how can you move on from something you love or someone you love? You can't move on from there. You just go along with whatever path you are on, and you try to walk it the best you can. But again, I understand what you're saying. Why should young men go out there? But when you live in a geographical reality like a country, and you have neighbors who have nothing better to do than all the time, sponsor terrorists and support terrorism. Pakistan, for example, is not just it's not just India. The world over, they're famous for their being a terror sponsor nation. Yes. What do you do if you don't send men out? Somebody has to defend the country. If they don't defend the country, you and me are not going to be able to lead our lives the way we are, right? Or anybody else in the country for that matter. So I think the pride is justified. The pride is very real and it is very justified. People have to do that difficult job because we're not in some, friendly country with all countries around us being our good friends. So that's our reality. And I think I just hope that everybody realizes and recognizes and shows solidarity with the families and and respects the sacrifices that our soldiers make.
Meghna ma'am, one final question to you, because this is something that comes up every time an incident of this kind takes place or there's a cricket tournament. This is about the hypocrisy of playing cricket with a country like Pakistan at a time when terrorism continues. I wanted to know what your stand on this is, because families of those who've fallen heroes, one never hears from them. I find that the most painful. We have noisy debates in television studios. We never hear from the families themselves because they prefer a life away from the spotlight. What do you think of something like this? Is there a hypocrisy in playing cricket with a country like Pakistan at a time when they continue to fuel terror against us?
Absolutely. My stand on this is very clear, and this, I think a lot of other families like mine have expressed the same thing. We shouldn't be playing with Pakistan. And I don't buy this Aman ki Asha bit, and this is sports and war is different, or this is different, that is different. Their own cricketers have said so earlier. One of them, a famous bowler said he was actually trying to hit Sachin Tendulkar and knock him out, with his ball. Another said he broke his TV because his daughter was watching something Indian. There is real hate over there. And when countries have been banned in the past, whether it was for an apartheid regime like South Africa or Afghanistan for the Taliban totalitarianism, I don't understand why Pakistan is not looked at as a terror sponsor the world over. Sports bodies should be tough on them. I wish they weren't even being allowed to play certain tournaments. Forget about India, even other countries. I just wish that they were not being allowed to play, because I don't see this whole thing of being soft on one side. Come on, the soldiers are like our families, right?
Yes.
They're like your families too. You don't socialize with families who are out to harm you or to murder somebody in your home. You don't do that. So my stand on this is pretty clear. There are enough countries that we can play with, and I don't think we should be playing Pakistan.
It's one thing for someone like me to say it. It's another thing for someone on social media to say it. And it is something else entirely for someone like Meghna Girish to say it. This is a person who has lost a loved one, a son, to Pakistani terror. And when those words come out of Meghna Girish's mouth, they have more meaning than all others put together. And that's the reason why I put that question to you. I thank you, Meghna ji, for being with me on this show. I know that you are busy with many of the things you are doing in Major Akshay's name as well. We all remember him. And I hope that this conversation will go far and wide as well, because it's not just the heroes, it's also their families. My namastes to you and Girish ji as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with me.
Jai Hind.
And while a nation grieves our fallen heroes, Colonel Manpreet Major Ashish and Deputy Superintendent Humayun, politics obviously has to erupt, and the whole nation continues to mourn for our brave hearts. But there has to be at least one Neta who needs to say something that's totally off-key and off-color. And of course, it is Farooq Abdullah once again pitching for India-Pakistan talks to resolve the Kashmir conflict. Take a look at this detailed report.
Narendra Modi government is under fire. The opposition is hauling the government over coals, accusing it of insensitivity toward army and police officers who died in the Anantnag shootout with terrorists. The India bloc has attacked the BJP for celebrating the success of G20 summit on Wednesday at a time when an encounter was going on in the Kashmir Valley. The opposition is accusing Prime Minister Modi of ignoring the sacrifice of Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish Dhonchak and DSP Humayun Bhatt.
नॉर्मलसी का तस्वुर उनका अलग है, कश्मीर का अलग है। इस सरजमीन में अभी खून बहता जा रहा है, मासूम लोगों का। ये इतने बड़े अफसर थे लेकिन मासूम थे, इनोसेंट थे।
हमारे प्रधानमंत्री के ऊपर भारतीय जनता पार्टी के कार्यकर्ता फुल बरसा रहे थे, अच्छी बात है, G20 का सक्सेस। लेकिन उसी वक्त कश्मीर में टेररिस्ट हमारे जवानों के ऊपर गोलियां बरसा रहे थे।
कल हमारे जवानों की शहादत हुई, यकीन मानिए प्रधानमंत्री जी और उनकी पार्टी जश्न मना रही थी। It could have waited.
The BJP hit back at the opposition.
छी जो लोग ये कह रहे थे उनको डूब के मर जाना चाहिए, और संवेदनहीन लोग को कहने का कोई नैतिक ताकत नहीं।
Meanwhile, former Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Farooq Abdullah has once again called for talks with Pakistan to resolve terrorism.
लड़ाई से अमन नहीं आता है, बातचीत से अमन आता है। आज जो ये हुआ है, क्या ये दिखाता है कि आतंकवाद कम हुआ है? किसको ये उल्लू बना रहे हैं ये कहकर? दोनों मुल्कों को वो घमंड छोड़ देना चाहिए और टेबल पे आके बात करनी चाहिए।
Kashmir leaders' demand has drawn a sharp reaction from Modi government, which follows a policy of no talk till terror ends.
अगर उसके ऊपर दबाव डालना है तो उसको अलग थलग करना पड़ेगा। उनको पता चलना चाहिए कि आप नॉर्मल चीजों के अंदर हमारे साथ रिश्ता तब तक नहीं कर सकते जब तक आप खुद नॉर्मल नहीं होंगे।
The Modi government has consistently maintained that terror attacks have come down ever since Article 370 that gave Jammu and Kashmir special status was abrogated. The latest terror strike in the Kashmir Valley, however, poses a new security challenge for the J&K administration. Bureau Report, India Today.
Another India-Pakistan cricket match is just around the corner. We must keep in mind how every year we lose our braves to Pakistan or Pakistan-sponsored terror. There's outrage on social media today, very familiar, it always happens, with many citizens calling for a ban on cricket ties with Pakistan. They say terrorism and cricket cannot go hand in hand. Each year, Pakistani terror keeps bleeding our braves. We inflict damage on them as well. But is it possible to have normal cricketing ties with a country that continues to benefit from India, trying to normalize that relationship, but still inflicting terror on us? Is it time we sideline Pakistan? Can Pakistan be banned from the ICC? Take a look.
Pakistan killing our braves again. As Terroristan bleeds India, a massive nationwide chorus to punish its terror misadventure and stop playing cricket. Anger spilled out on the streets as angry protesters burnt effigy of Pakistan terror. Netizens are up in arms, mounting heat on BCCI to stop matches against Pakistani cricket team.
I think, whether it is cricket or it's cinema or it's any other field, there is just no reason why we should be having any kind of ties with that country.
Angry India says there would be no cricket terror tango and the country which backs terror should be boycotted from the world of sports.
What is the cost or the price of one Jawan when, we are placing entertainment first, our leisure first over the people who are taking care of us, who are at the front.
Crucially, the government too called for complete isolation of Pakistan.
जब तक हम अलग थलग नहीं करेंगे पाकिस्तान को, नहीं तो उनके लिए बिजनेस एज नॉर्मल। हाँ जी ठीक है, बॉलीवुड वाले आ जाएंगे हमारे यहाँ, क्रिकेट मैच खेलने वाले आ जाएंगे हमारे यहाँ, सब ठीक है, चंगा है जी, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है। वही मैं कह रहा हूँ कि अगर उसके ऊपर दबाव डालना है तो उसको अलग थलग करना पड़ेगा।
Several opposition members also backed shunning Pakistan.
जब आतंकी माहौल बनाती है पाकिस्तान तो उनके साथ किसी तरीके का संवाद नहीं होना चाहिए। स्पोर्ट्स ग्राउंड पे हो या किसी सोशल ग्राउंड पे हो, किसी कल्चरल ग्राउंड पे हो या किसी तरीके का बायलैटरल रिलेशनशिप हो।
BCCI Vice President Rajiv Shukla made it clear that there will never be bilateral series with Pakistan, but only matches under ICC tournaments.
Terrorism and sports cannot go hand in, but it had been taken a decision. It was a policy matter, and it had been decided that in international events, Pakistan will play with Pakistan.
India and Pakistan have not played a bilateral series since 2013, but they have faced each other in other tournaments at neutral venues. With Nitin Srivastav in Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
The deaths of Colonel Manpreet Singh, Major Ashish Dhonchak and Deputy Superintendent of Police Humayun Bhatt has triggered a familiar debate that's usually dusted off the shelves every time there's India-Pakistan cricket in the air, like it is now with the Asia Cup. Now, these eruptions are usually and understandably steeped in emotion and anger. Many Indians are now at an emotional peak, and their fury is totally justified. You don't have to be a chest-thumping nationalist to wonder how cricket and terror can go together hand in hand. The counter-arguments by those against angry Indians who see as peaceniks and Aman Ki Asha types is that sports builds bridges between people and fosters economic linkages and therefore helps to normalize the broken relations between India and Pakistan. While that could be theoretically true, I wanted to put some facts on the table for you to think about for the first time. For the recently concluded Pakistan Super League, PSL, this year, the Pakistan Cricket Board paid approximately $6 million in taxes to the Pakistan government. That's tax paid on just one single Pakistani cricket tournament. Under the new finance model to be rolled out by the International Cricket Council or ICC in the coming days, the Pakistan Cricket Board stands to receive about $34.51 million. In 2021-22, the PCB clocked an annual revenue of $111 million. Now, I have no idea how much tax they must have paid on that, but it's safe to say that it runs into the millions if they ended up paying $6 million in tax on just one tournament. Now, that tax, viewer, goes into the Pakistan national kitty, the federal government's taxes. It is no mystery that Pakistan's stated policy of support of terror and militancy in India is bankrolled by the central government funds in Islamabad. In other words, it isn't a stretch to see how an enriched PCB allows at some indirect or direct level the Pakistani deep state more resources for its terrorist projects. Who is to say that PCB taxes, such as they are, don't swell a financial corpus that isn't then used to fund terror groups that mount attacks against India? Is there anyone who can disprove that? This may sound simplistic, but that's actually how simple the argument really is. And I'm yet to hear a credible argument against it. The PCB being one autonomous tax-paying organ in Pakistan with no say in how its tax dollars are used is one thing. But for India, with the world's largest and richest cricket board, the BCCI, giving the PCB by far its biggest revenue stream and an opportunity to swell its bank balance, is playing an ironic and not complicated role in directly giving the Pakistan government the resources it needs to do many things, including to fund terror, which the world knows Pakistan does as a matter of policy. So the next time someone preaches a lopsided peace and the benefits of sports as a normalizer of relations, show them this video and say you're waiting for a counter-argument. And when you do, you know where to find me. Thanks for listening. And only a reminder that the Anantnag operation is still very much on. The death toll could conceivably go higher. We will keep our eye and responsibly report every angle on this unfolding story. Thank you for watching today's edition of 5 Live. I'll see you at the same time tomorrow.